Let's be clear, what follows on this DVD is brutal. Some of it could be described as savage. But it's not for sport, it's not a fitness regime, and it's not a hybrid style. This is hardcore self-protection training. Some of what follows may shock you. I make no apologies for that. It's only to be used when the circumstances absolutely demand it. I recently received an email from a street fight instructor who promised he could teach me or any student how to win any street fight in under 3 minutes. I find the idea absolutely laughable. Now, we've spent quite a bit of time breaking down every single technical aspect of what is a very, very simple core game plan for you. But in its manifestation, if you train it properly, when you switch it on, it should be about 5 to 6 seconds of extreme violence. Before the other guys even realise what's happening, the fight should be over. The core game plan is a 4-phase combative strategy. It consists of the shock, blast, maul and crush phase to completely devastate an attacker. It must be drilled with violent intent and skill, diligently with self-discipline over time to be truly effective. Okay, so we're going to talk about the setup now. There are 2 different ways of doing the setup. You'll see me do this in 2 different ways, different times, and I do it differently dependent on the level of threat. If I don't perceive the level of threat as being particularly high, I'll do what's become known as like a classic fence, which is your hands up here. It's a very assertive looking stance. If I don't think the level of threat is particularly high, or you're working a door, or if you're a policeman, or this is a kind of thing where you're working with the members of the public all the time, this is a great thing to do. We say, come on sir, just step back, or if you want to talk to me from there, stay out of my space. Very assertive, you're being very clear, and any witnesses watching can see that and go, it's obvious what he wants him to do. Even if there's really loud banging music and you can't hear the words coming out of my mouth, you know that this is not particularly aggressive. And yet, from here, I can still deliver a preemptive strike should I need to. The problem comes when the level of threat is so high and the situation is so ambiguous that you don't want to telegraph any kind of intent whatsoever. The problem with this is it's not that far from this. And you could be telegraphing, warning the person or the people involved that you know what you're doing, which is the last thing you want to do. So if the level of threat is higher, I would say that's where you want to come into something that you'll see me do at times, where I set people up like this. And truly this is more of a setup. This is tricking someone. I'm now tricking him into thinking that I'm a soft target and that I'm frightened. So I bring my energy right the way down, which brings his energy up, makes him feel confident, makes him feel like he's got the upper hand, and then his guard is let down. So that when I do eventually go, fuck off, and I'm right the way inside, it explodes from nothing into something. Whereas if I'm here, stay back mate, stay back, and bang, I've warned him. Not only have I warned him, but I've warned the little rats that he might have with him who are gathering behind me as well. Now, you can look at that and you can say, this makes a lot of sense. I can deliver a preemptive strike. If he goes to hit me, I can block it here as well if my hands are nice and high. So you look at that in the dojo, in 2D, you go, yeah, that looks fine, that looks sensible. If you try and take that into all the different situations you could get into out in the real world though, it doesn't work, it's not always applicable. Road rage incident, you both jump out the car, guy steams over to you, perfect. There's going to be witnesses. Just stay there mate, if you want to talk to me, just stay there. Absolutely perfect for that. Walking through a dodgy bit of town late at night, you and your girlfriend on your own, and then a group of chaps, a group of little thugs come over, maybe about 6 of them, and they just start by talking to you and talking a bit of rubbish to you, this is not right. This is not where it's at. If there's six people there, if there's 6 little rats there, which one am I supposed to be fencing? And when I do that, what am I telling them? I'm telling them I know something. I'm telling them I might be trained. So as I say, there ain't that much difference between this and this. So it could look martial artsy. The last thing I want to do is telegraph that I am trained, that I have any intention to do them any harm. We are setting people up, which means you're tricking them and you're drawing them in. So when the level of threat is higher and the situation is more ambiguous, this is not where it's at. It's here. And this looks weak, and it looks, much more passive, much more defensive. I actually look quite frightened, but it's a trick. I'm just tricking them, it's just acting. So that when I do go, it's that much more of a shock, and I can overwhelm them much more forcefully and end the fight decisively. The key points to the setup, the main objective for the setup is to set your opponent up for a knockout shot and end the fight immediately. Key points to doing that is to try and keep your hands higher than his hands as you're talking to him, and as you're talking to him, setting him up, get your strong side chambered back. So if I'm setting up for a right cross, I need my right leg to be coming back. Hands higher than his, right leg is back. That sets me up nicely before he even realises the fight is on to deliver some kind of a shot that's just going to end the fight there. The objective of the shock phase is to render your opponent unconscious with a single preemptive strike. This is an unusual right cross. It's a looping right cross. A normal right cross will be delivered straight. This is going to be looping round. I'm going to explain that in a moment. The reason why it's the first one, it's the longest range one, is because it works best when you actually step in. So your opponent's giving you a little bit of space, or you actually have had a little bit of time and distance to realise what's going on. You're aggressively pursuing him with this first shot. So what you do is, having set up and caught your range, you step in and across and you punch straight into the jaw here. Those are the primary dynamics of the right cross. So the key points to this are to deliver with the middle knuckle right into the very tip of his chin here, and it's a clipping shot. So as you come in, it's not straight, we're not going straight in, we're looping and we're clipping across to drive his head back and round. Any clip that you see of a boxing knockout or a street fight knockout, it will have an element of the head being shook that way. That's exactly what we're seeking to do, just clip his jaw across that way for a good fast knockout shot. The other key elements here are to step across his centre line this way, my left foot. I'm driving and powering off the right foot, and I'm smashing right the way through his jaw here. Bang, it's a power shot, and I'm really pushing into it. You can actually even jump into that shot, but I'll discuss that in a moment. Other key elements are the kinetic chain, bringing from the floor. It's your feet, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, then your hands. I'm going to exaggerate it. It's here. Bang, you smash right the way through the jaw for the knockout shot. A slightly more advanced variation on the right cross, and a technique that's worked for me quite well on a number of occasions, is to put a small sliding jump into it. So as you're stepping across with your left to deliver there, you're not just stepping, you actually jump a little bit. And if you do that, you can connect with a lot more body weight and a lot more force behind it. It's not the safest way of doing things, but if you catch somebody with it, you'll get the kind of knockout where they don't go backwards, they just drop straight down. It's a good instant knockout shot. So as you would normally deliver, which is here with good hip movement, and your left foot comes across, this time you're just jumping slightly into it, and you actually want to hit before your left foot hits the ground. So to exaggerate that, it's here, there, and then that's the last thing that goes down. So to put all that together, there, and you jump, smash through the guy's jaw, and you'll end up right the way past him, and he should drop right at your feet. That's if it works. So to practice this technique again, make sure the pad man's not smashing the pad back into your hand too much. You're not focused on driving the pad backwards and seeing how hard you can hit a pad with your bare hand. You're clipping. It's a precision shot. So you clip and get that pad shake, but you can also put a little slide and jump in there as well, get a bit more power. The important elements of this to remember when you're delivering the right cross is to get that kinetic chain coming up from the floor, get plenty of hip movement, and you're striking across, and remember you're clipping the target. Now when you're using the pads, if you're not used to using the pads, try and train this with no gloves, with no wraps on. If you do it with wraps on and with a glove on, you'll start to get very, very comfortable with that. The person who's holding the pads for you, if they turn it, it starts to represent a jaw a little bit more. Whatever you do, when you're hitting this, make sure you remember your hips. It's your feet, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, and then your hand goes last. The weapon actually moves last. And remember to step across, as I said to you before, here. Now, as you're holding the pad, what this pad man's doing is correct. What he's not doing is driving that into my fist, which you should never do anyway. But if I haven't got wraps on and I haven't got gloves on and he drives it in, over a few repetitions, that's going to damage my hand. So that needs to be static. I'm just aiming to clip here, and remember to shake the pad. See that shake? That represents the jaw being moved across that way. So remember your feet, remember your hips, weapon goes last, and just shake the pad. The next knockout shot that we're going to look at is called a chin jab, which is a term from World War II combatives. This is one that you deliver when your opponent's got a little bit cocky and he steps in towards you. As he steps in, simultaneously, you're going to drive the heel of your palm up and into his chin. But you're not just going to stand there and deliver it like that. You have to step right the way through him. It's an extremely aggressive technique. So if you step out again, it's as he steps in, I'm coming in here, smashing his chin right the way up. I'm thinking about forcing him to look at the ceiling. I'm putting massive amounts of pressure on the back of his neck, and I'm driving his chin and his jaw up towards the top of his head, delivering a huge amount of concussive impact for the brain there. So you get nice and low if you step out. As he steps in, drive this up and in and smash it all the way back and really drive through his space. So when you're practicing this for the chin jab, make sure you've got everything set up. The pad is supposed to be representing the human skull. It's not a great representation of the human skull to be hitting bare knuckle, but that's all we can work with. So with your pad man, what you want to get him to do is to just lean that slightly forward to try and get more of a representation of a jaw. Remember, this is a shot, you're not just driving back, you're also driving up and in. So make sure you represent that when you do it. Don't have the pad man put too much resistance in, don't have him slam against your palm, because here your wrist is vulnerable, and this is not what is going to be happening in real life. In real life, it's his jaw, and the only thing that's going to hold it in place is his neck muscles, but as you've delivered from up under the peripheral vision, those won't be resisting against you, and if they are, all the pressure will go into his jaw and his jaw will break. So not too much resistance in the pads. Plenty of violent intent with this. You want to be going straight forward and up and in that way. And you're delivering here. And step again. Step right the way through, up and in, and step. And you're going to have to visualize that you're actually hitting into the chin. So engage your imagination, get into state, and smash up and through. And you want to imagine taking somebody's head clean off the shoulders. So from here, nice and low, keep your knees bent, keep your center of gravity low, smash up and in there, and you're driving his head right the way back and up so he's facing the ceiling. The next knockout shot that we're going to look at is a lateral palm, which you deliver across and this way into the jaw with the base of your palm, the heel of your palm. Most people look at that and think it's like a slap, like a bitch slap or a pimp slap, which is actually delivered with the top part of the hand. Now, on the basis that these are supposed to be the most brutal techniques, you might look at that and think, we're slapping him in the face, what's that going to do? It's not a slap. I'm driving this. The base of my palm is directly connected to my forearm. It's solid bone, and I'm smashing him right in the jaw with the intent to take his head off his shoulders, driving his head right the way over. The great thing about this is very versatile, because even if I miss and I hit him in the neck, in the ear, in the top of the head, it can still deliver with a knockout strike. And it's a huge gross motor movement. Smashing it in there with the intent to take his head off his shoulders. So to train the lateral palm, what you want to be doing with the pad is if you just have your partner turn it that way, you're probably best to turn it one-handed, just like that there. Now, it's a very, very powerful technique, and you can throw your training partner's chest and shoulder out, so just be careful, give each other feedback, don't let that machismo creep in there. This is a more powerful technique than you probably realise. If you're doing this for the first time, this is the experiment that I recommend you do, because this gets everybody. Completely relax your arm, so put no muscular tension in your arm whatsoever, and deliver just with your hips. So from here, see what kind of power you can deliver with no muscular tension whatsoever. Great way of learning the power of the hips as well, just how important that hip movement, that loose body movement is. 9 times out of 10 people tense up, they think I've got to hurt him, and they get really stressed out. And you can deliver power that way, but only if you've learned to deliver on the hips. Now, if I was to actually catch somebody with that, it would be very, very powerful. But the fact is, if I do this, he's going to respond, he's going to realise. So we've got to find a skillful middle ground where you're getting that hip movement in, but you're also still getting the speed in as well. You're tightening everything up, so the hip movement is there. Keep your elbow high, don't drop it. That is not as powerful. So to that extent, it's the same as like when you're throwing a hook in boxing. You keep your elbow high. Here, right the way through. Same mechanics. I'm stepping across the target, I'm driving with my hip, and the weapon goes last. As before, you can also, as a more advanced technique, jump in, and it becomes even more powerful again. Okay, the next knockout shot that we're going to look at is the elbow strike. Now the elbow is hard to injure, and it is a very, very brutal shot, but you need to make sure the other guy's in range, because if I start trying to go long range with a short range tool, he's going to see it and I'm going to be in trouble. This is best used, especially if the guy is taller than you, if somebody's walking onto you trying to intimidate you, doing the whole head pecking chest to chest, you know, ego display thing. When they come into this range, this is perfect. In an ideal world, I should be trying to hit the point of his chin here with the very, very tip of my elbow. But, you know, even monkeys fall out of trees. So as long as I hit below his eye line with my elbow and I smash it in and across, I'm going to get a good effect. Now, with this, you need to drive in to the target with your feet as well, driving off with your hips as before, and it's here. Smash him right the way across. That's going to have a really, really devastating effect on the guy's head. Okay, so training the elbow, same principles as before. We don't want to get trapped in this macho game of seeing how hard we can bang the pad and making it fly backwards and making big loud noises. You want to be training for precision, for what you would get in the street. So you want to turn the pad this way a little bit, because it's representing the human jaw. This is then becomes the tip of the jaw, and what I'm aiming for is to shake the pad. Okay, driving him backwards with the whole thing, yeah, that's fine, but it's not that applicable for what you do in real life. So you actually want to be clipping, because we're still going for the knockout shot here. Doesn't look as impressive, much more useful. Don't start from out here, because if you're out, this is not the tool to be using from this range. You need to be close. To throw an elbow, you actually need to be pretty much at headbutting range. So you've got to be in close as you're practicing this. Same as before, drive from the hips, relax your shoulders, don't tense your shoulders up. You can get power, but you'll telegraph the shot and you won't get as much power as if you relax your shoulders, come from the hips. Let me exaggerate it for you. So here, bang, that's a completely exaggerated movement, but that's the principle. And look, I'm actually driving him, his balance, so he's having to step back. With totally relaxed movement, get a lot of power. We can't afford to be hit like that because it's too telegraphed, so again, tighten it up a little bit. Maybe you want to work it from some kind of a fence position with your hands up here, so you're talking to the guy saying, listen mate, step out of that space, and then you're going to drive him with the shot. It's a clipping shot, a shot of precision, so think about where you're going, think about the dynamics as well of following through, and again, we're stepping through with our feet, and the deeper you get, that's where the power comes from. Trust your body, move your whole, don't try and power up here, like that. Use your body to power through. Hips and feet. That's where the power is going to come from, and precision. Good, precise movements, right into the target, remembering the effect we're going for, which at this point is unconsciousness. You want to knock the guy out. So headbutting is often seen as a peculiarly British thing to do. I think we have more of a predisposition to doing it because of playing football or soccer and headbutting the ball. We're not as sensitive in regards to our heads as people are in other areas of the world where they're used to wearing a lot of protection. The fact is, your head is very, very hard, and it is a great tool to be using as long as you're hitting the right targets. It's not so great for a taller guy to be doing it to a shorter guy. It's not a fantastic thing to be doing. It's still possible. If Adam was going to be doing it to me, he'd be hitting with the corners of his head all the way around here. It's structurally very, very strong. This is strong here as well. You want to avoid hitting with this part of your head. I've got a scar there from doing that, and if it splits, it bleeds very, very heavily, and you get blood all in your eyes. When I cut that, my face was just a mask of blood. And that was from headbutting somebody here to here. You know, that just hurts both of you. If you're going to deliver a headbutt, you should be going either into the nose or below the nose, into the jaw, maybe into the mouth, being careful of the teeth, or into the chin that way. If I was going to deliver it to Adam, I can use any of the sides of my head to deliver into his jaw here, pushing up here, or you can come into the side of the cheek here. All of that will fracture. Everything from here down on the face is good. So the jaw, the chin, the mouth, the nose and the cheekbones, that's all absolutely fine, that's all valid. It can be hit with any part of the weapon, the back of your head, top of your head, side of your head. Let's talk about delivery for a second. Targeting is the most important thing. So making sure that I'm hitting with the right part of my head to the right target, that's the most important thing. And then just bring it into the space. If you're not sure, just tap. And preferably brace. If you can get around the back of his head, or maybe even get a C-grip on here first, then my hands know where he is. So even with eyes closed, bang, and I can bring it onto my head as well. And I can just tap it in. A great way of learning how to headbutt is just by pushing the shots into each other in a shot placement drill. Make sure your partner's got his jaw nice and firmly closed. And be careful, because if you clonk in even with that much force, you can hurt each other. So you've got to be really, really careful when you're doing it. For me, I quite like to do a rapid sort of attack. So if I was in here and I was going at full speed, it would be here. And I'm actually not just going to go with one big headbutt, but I'll probably be looking to hit him with multiple headbutts. And you see, as I'm practicing that, I'm just covering the target with my hand just to make sure that I don't accidentally hit him. This is a very, very powerful tool. Out of all your body, your head is the heaviest, and it's also the hardest. So if that does connect, you can get some truly horrendous knockouts. There's a video clip of a girl headbutting a bouncer, and what she does is, I don't usually teach this as a technique, but if you can get it, it's very, very powerful. And that's actually to push the person back, and then as they resist you and push forward, bang, smash that in there. It's a very, very classic way of delivering a headbutt. Grabbing, pushing, and then smashing it in there. So it's back and in, bang, and it's here. And I'm almost scared to deliver that because I can tell how powerful that is. What's happening there, as I pull forward, what you get is like a resistance on the person's head. So if you pull me forward, there's a whiplash here, bang. So my head ends up headbutting into him, but because his head is so nice and low here, go again, bang. And that's where the knockout comes from. So it's a very, very powerful technique if you can get it. So to put this back into context of the core game plan, primarily we're looking to use this at the shock phase, but only when somebody has come very, very close into your space and they're giving you that bit of ego display where they're puffing up and all the rest of it, and they're here. This is a fantastic range to be using the headbutt from. There are other scenarios, you know, if you're carrying stuff, you never know when you're going to end up in a fight. If your hands are low and for some reason you're in a crowded space and you just can't bring them up in time, then again, bang, the headbutt is a really good way of beginning that fight, beginning that core game plan beatdown. At other points in the core game plan where the headbutt is used is at the mauling phase, where after the guys, so if we say we started with a headbutt, we've gone here, bang, this is our phase 1, cover up. This is our phase 2, where you're hitting them here, and then he brings his hands down, bang, and you're in again with another headbutt. That's where it's applied at different points. So you can, if they're at close range, you can start with that. Having started with it, if they don't get knocked straight out or go straight to the floor, then after you've delivered their blast and they've covered up in some way, if as soon as that head comes up, if they look at you, then you can start coming in here and firing it in here. It's a very, very aggressive, very unpleasant technique. If you ever get hit with a headbutt, extremely uncomfortable, extremely painful, and really can deliver a knockout. We don't want to be hurting ourselves here. Tap it in. Because in real life, you're not going to be worrying about power. If you catch someone with the headbutt, you catch them with the right part of your head, using the right mechanics onto the right target, you're going to get an effect. That's all we want. So when you're practicing on the pads, just practice to contact with the right part of your head and make sure your partner's not pushing the pad onto you. The pad isn't a great representation to be doing this on, but we've got to work with the equipment that we've got available to us, which is either heavy bags or pads, and I would prefer to use a pad for the headbutt shot. So here, you're practicing hitting with the side of your head, the back of your head, the front of your head, and it's precision, precision, precision all the time. Bit of a dirty thing to do, but you can actually spit, put something on there, and then hit it, because that's the kind of targeting I need. So I've got to be able to look and actually put something there and go, right, that's where I want my head to go, bang, and I'm straight in there. And I'm not driving it and hurting my neck, I'm just putting enough in so that I know that if I caught somebody with that, that's going to smash right the way through their nose, that's going to smash through their teeth, that's going to go through the jaw. That's enough. I don't want to be going bang in here because I'm going to start damaging my head, I'm going to start damaging my neck. Enough is enough. So with violent intent and good precision, I can give myself a little marker there and bang and drive in. That's enough. That's as much as we need to do to practice that technique for the knockout. The blast phase is to stress your opponent out. It's to give them constant offensive pressure, keep them on the back foot physically and psychologically so they can't think about attacking you. Crowd them, get into their space. You might possibly get a knockout shot from there, but you might not. That's not the primary objective. You can think of this as being like covering fire. You just want them to keep their head down so that you can set them up for the next phase. You've gone for the knockout shot, but it hasn't worked. So you've delivered, say, a right cross, or you've done your headbutt, and the guy's still standing. Rather than looking back and admiring your work or wondering what to do next, the blast phase encourages you to deliver the shot and then immediately maintain that combative pressure. This is almost the same principle as they have in the military of suppressive fire. So I'm going to start hitting him with shots without the intention of knocking him out. My intention is to get him to cover up, to get him on the back foot psychologically and physically, because nobody can hurt you if they're cowering and turning away that way. So you deliver the shot and then you're going to deliver a blast. This can either be done with the fists or with the palms, but the principle is the same. If it's with the fists, I'm coming in with forward motion and I'm just repeatedly striking into the head. If he covers up and his jaw isn't available to me for whatever reason, I don't want to keep, if you cover, not with a boxing, that's it, like a less trained cover, which anybody would use, which is like to kind of turn away like that. If his jaw's not available, I'm not going to keep hunting, because if I hunt with my fists, I'm going to end up punching him in the head and damaging my fists. If he covers up, I'm going to move to palms. So the rule is simple. If the jaw's available, I'm going to go punch, 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 punch into the jaw. If for whatever reason he's covered, or if he turns away, because this is what people do in a fight, if they're untrained, they'll just turn away that way. If he's turned away and he's covering his head, then we move to palms. Because the palms you can deliver into the top of the skull, and you just keep palming away there. And I'm maintaining pressure on him, I'm moving into him and delivering that pressure up and into his head to stress him out and get him to cover up. So if the jaw is available, I punch, because there's still a chance that one of these punches as I'm blasting away might get through and knock him out. If he's covered and he's turned away a little bit, then it's palms. And as you're palming, what you can actually start to do if you turn that way is, if he's covered here, I can rip that out. Sorry, mate. I can rip that down and palm at the same time. What I mustn't do is headhunt with my fists when he's covered right the way over, because I'm going to end up hurting my own hands. So once that's all covered up, just palm away into the skull. Don't worry about it. You're not going to hurt your hands that way. If his hands are covered up here, you can either palm into the hands and into the protective arms, maintaining that pressure, or you rip them down out of the way and then continue palming into the head. With the blast phase, what I need to emphasise for you is just how much travel is involved here and just how much you should be expecting to move during this phase. It's difficult to represent with a partner when you're being compliant and trying to look after each other. If I've hit, say, a right cross, and I get the cover, you cover up, and then you're striking here, because of where he stood, it's very, very difficult to show you just how far through I'm supposed to be going. So if you just step to the side for a second, if I've actually hit here, bang, there, I would be expecting to move probably about 2 meters in front of me. And I always think of it, the actual number of hits doesn't matter, of about 6 shots, which would be straightforward here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what I'm hoping to generate there is, as I've already said to you, none of these is designed to be a knockout shot, but the potential is, if I've driven him right the way back with strikes to his head, which is the heaviest part of his body, there's a very good chance that I can unbalance him. And at this stage of the fight, we go straight to phase 4. So the amount of travel, whether it's punches or palms, doesn't matter, and you can actually train this as a solo drill. Set yourself up with like a 2 meter line, and you just work straight forward. If it's punches, it's the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you want to be covering that space. And your focus needs to be on applying combative pressure up and into the head. Palms, punches, doesn't matter, it's here. And you're driving right the way through the guy, but with pressure coming through your hands. If you stand back in for me, Adam. If the guy is very, very heavy, and if you cover up, and you're striking in, and you can't drive him backwards, circle around him. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that way. So, if I was delivering this way, I'd actually start curving around. So there's still pressure moving forward, but it's going around the target as well. So you're maintaining forward pressure, but just accounting for the fact that you can't move him bodily backwards because of the weight difference between you two. Cover up again. So I'm coming around here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which also has the added advantage of, if you turn to the camera, he thinks there's pressure coming this way, and with all the hits going into his head, they then start slipping round into his jaw, round to the side here. So there's an extra level of advantage there as well. But move your feet, move your feet. You should be expecting to move at least 2 meters through. If you step to the side for me again. So even if he was, where, just stay there, where he just was, there, I need to be going right the way through that space. So, you know, regardless of what tool I'm using to do that, I'm displacing him. But what we are doing here is we're using the palms, the fists, to apply pressure to the head. I'll show you one more time because it's worth doing this on your own as a solo drill. Just move forward and get used to hitting, and moving forward at the same time. So onto the pads, if you want to do this as a very, very simple pad drill. It's kind of an unusual thing. You don't normally see people drilling pads this way, but I think it's very, very useful because it more closely represents the response of the human head during a fight. In most pad drills, if you just pop that up, the person holding the pad stays still, so I'll just do 2 straight palms. So if I'm here and I'm just practicing my palm strikes, and this is supposed to represent the human head, as a representation, that would suggest that I'm going to smack somebody in the head and they're just going to do that and they're not going to move. It's never going to happen. You'll always get some kind of a response. If you come towards me, so don't hit the pad, don't be looking to hit the pad hard. Remember, it's combative pressure. You're hitting to confuse the guy, to overwhelm him, to crowd him. So forget about hitting it hard. Just as a very, very basic drill, just have your pad man just walk backwards, and it just gets you used to moving your feet and striking at the same time. So just walk backwards and just go here. That's a very, very basic level of the drill. And then as you get used to it, if you just walk backwards a little bit faster on this one, not yet. Just a little bit faster as I start hitting. That's it. Now I'm chasing it. Now that starts to feel a little bit more real. A little bit faster again. Now, much more realistic. That starts to feel like a fight, or a phase of a fight, where people are doing this because you caught them and they're staggering backwards, or they're covering and doing that, and you're just palming into the back of the head. As a way of getting used to the natural way in which a human being will stumble backwards when they've been knocked off balance, you can have your training partner stand with their feet together, which is not an intelligent way to receive a strike, but for this kind of a drill, it's a good way of getting used to somebody just wobbling backwards and moving back this way. So I'm actually going to be forcing him to go backwards now. By striking the pad, then following through. We'll do that again. I won't hit as hard this time. So here. Don't get fixated on you've got to do it with both hands. If that's appropriate to hit with both hands, do it. But what just happened there is I hit him here, and I'd slip to here, and just hit him again. Don't hit with both hands for the sake of hitting with both hands. If it's easy to just go in here, or even here, then that's what you do. Some of this looks quite brutal, and some of it is going to look like, you know, you're pursuing the guy, and it doesn't look like self-defense anymore. But we do what it takes to get the job done. As I explained to you earlier, you've done everything possible to avoid hitting the guy, and he's forced you to hit him. So you've got to follow through. Having made that decision, no half measures, we go all the way. So if you slow it down again, the basic level of the drill, when you try this with your partner, do it this speed, just walk backwards slowly. And that'll start to get you used to it. When you get more comfortable, just have your partner go back a little bit faster. You can even move the pad left and right to represent the person responding and moving their head around. Don't worry about, hold it tight, smashing into the pad with force. Very little of what I teach is about hitting as hard as you can. A lot of it is about hitting as intelligently as you can. The primary objective of the mauling phase is to get the guy to the ground. The way in which you do this is to soften him up and get him to lower his head. You soften him up with your heavy shots, your headbutts, your knees, your elbows. Once you've got him to get his head down, then you're going to use that reverse C grip, and you're going to use the shuck, which is where, having got the reverse C grip on, you shuck his head towards you in an aggressive jerking, pulling motion. By the time you've done all that, he'll probably want to throw himself to the ground. Primary objective of this phase, get the guy to the floor. Okay, so the next phase that you're going to move into is then mauling your opponent. Now, what you want to be looking to do is to control the space a little bit. You've got him to cover up, and you've got him to this position covering up. Now my objective is to drive him down to here. If I can get a guy to cover up, just cover up here, standing, a standing fetal position, there's very, very little he can do. But he's not actually that vulnerable yet. If I can get him down to here, he then starts to become very, very vulnerable. Knees into the head and drag downs into the floor. So how do we get him there? You've delivered your blast, bang, 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 and you started to move into him. Now, as you're moving into him, you can either body check and hit that way, what they call an iron mountain in Kung Fu, just for those of you into your martial arts. Strike in here, you drive straight forward, or just shove the guy. Combative pressure doesn't always have to be some kind of martial artsy looking move. He's covered up, I can just shove him backwards. If there's things in the environment, he might fall over, and then we move right to the final phase of the core game plan. Doesn't keep it simple, that's my point. Box him in. If he's covering up here, if he looks up, so if he pulls his hands down to see where I'm up to, that's what you need to capitalise on that. You need to stop him from doing that because you're trying to push him down. If his hands come down and he's looking like he's getting ready to turn it around again, then you come in, bang, straight for the headbutt, bang, elbow into the face. You punish him for looking up. As you've delivered that headbutt or the elbow, now moving into heavier shots, you're going to get him to cover up again, and you just keep delivering the heavy shots until you get him to put his head down. So it's headbutts and elbows, get him to cover, then drive knees into his legs, which is really painful. Just drive straight into the meat of the leg with your knee, bang that way into his groin and into his bladder area just above his groin there. And all you're looking to do is to drive that head down. To help, you need to be yanking into the back of his neck and pushing his head downward that way, just to get him into that position. Once we've got him into that position, so we've blasted him, bang, 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 bang. If his hands come down and he's looking like he's getting ready to go again, you punish him for that. Then you're driving him with knees. Then you want to be starting pulling this head down. At this point, he might be soft enough and ready to go, in which case we do a drag down, which is really, really simple. No complex throws here. You just take hold of the head, step backwards and pull him to the floor, and that's it, drag him down. If he's resisting, if we get to this point and he bases out and he won't let me do that, I've got to soften him a little bit more. At this point we move to reverse C grip and a shock. Okay, so a C grip technique is where you make a C with your thumb and your middle finger, and you drive it up and into the trachea, here, bracing on the back of the neck, squeezing up and in. The reverse C grip is exactly the same thing, but with the head down, I'm gripping the whole unit of his throat with the whole of my hand, and then what I'm going to do is a shock. A shocking movement is here, you step back, you jerk, down, puts massive amounts of pressure on the throat because of the C grip and on his neck. So to soften him further, let's recap. Of blast, 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 he's covered. If his hands come down, I'm going to punish him for doing that. I'm going to start taking control of his head here, driving him with knees, get his head further down. At this point, we might go to the floor. If he bases out and he's still strong, base out, don't let me take you down, I need to soften him more. I'm going to do the reverse C grip, grabbing in here, not going to do that to you. For the sake of training, I'm just going to hold him under the jaw. I'm going to shock, which is, it's almost like you're trying to yank his head off. Pop it backwards here. If he needs it again, drag him again. A couple more knees into the top of the skull, here. And by that time, he'll be more than happy to get to the floor because you battered him. That is the mauling phase in a nutshell. I want to give you a warning now about the following technique. I do not advocate the use of this technique unless it is the most extreme of circumstances. A life or death struggle on a battlefield, somebody who thinks they're about to be kidnapped, to be tortured, raped, murdered, a situation that is so extreme and so desperate that you feel justified to use a technique where you are likely, very likely, to cause at least brain damage and quite possibly death. The following technique is extremely dangerous. I cannot emphasize that enough. Be very careful with it. The final phase of the core game plan is the most dangerous phase. This is the most vicious technique I could show you. Once you've got inside and you punish the guy here to sort of soften him up to get him to the floor, and you finally do get him down, or if at any point during the fight he falls because of the sheer amount of combative pressure you're delivering, this is the phase you move to. We're not going to jump on him and mount him and punch there. We're not going to go for an arm lock. I'm not going to stand over him and use my hands to attack his head. We're assuming that the level of threat is so high that we need to just terminate the fight. The most dangerous, most vicious technique I can show you is this one. For several simple reasons. This movement, you do it all day. Walking upstairs requires no training whatsoever to lift your leg and stamp down. The thighs, apart from your back, are the strongest and heaviest muscles in your body. Add to that, your whole body weight is over it. Add to that, he's going to be on concrete. So it's between 15.5 stone, plus a bit of rage coming through my foot, his skull and the concrete. This is going to lead to potentially death, or at least brain damage. So this is the kind of thing that you can only use when the situation really, really requires it. But if it does, as soon as he's gone down, banging it straight into the skull. I don't want him to get back up again. Maybe he's armed, maybe there's loads of people around. I'm in genuine fear that if I don't stop this guy, I might die or end up a vegetable myself. So it's either him or me. As soon as he goes to the floor, no messing around, no choking, no arm locks, no ankle locks. I'm not going down there with him, I'm staying upright, and bang, I'm going to deliver straight into the head, and you're out. And that's the final phase. So what we have with the core game plan is a 4-phase strategy. You set them up, you deliver your shock tactic, which is a preemptive strike. If they don't go down immediately, which they should do if you've trained it properly, but if they don't, you move immediately to the blast phase. You continue with constant offensive pressure directed at the head to crowd them and keep them on the back foot. Then from there you move to the mauling phase. This is where you're going to drop your heavy shots, your headbutts, your knees, your elbows. Your prerogative here is to get the head down, drag them to the floor, and then you finish with the crush phase. You might have noticed throughout this DVD as you've been watching it, I'm barely making contact with my partner and I'm delivering with very, very little intensity most of the time. The fact is, these techniques just can't be delivered with any kind of contact or intensity. They're too dangerous. If you drill these diligently and with discipline, what you need to do is you need to make up for that lack of contact by using the pads in an intelligent way and by visualizing the contact with maximum effect. If any one of these shots sneaks through in training, as you'll find yourself when you start training it, you cause serious injury very, very quickly. So please be careful. I want you to train hard, but I want you to train intelligently, and that means training safely.